Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the April Fool's edition of the Urban Village Development Commission. This is no joke. We're here to talk about a lot of things tonight. I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Looks like it's a male-dominated panel tonight. I think we're going to have to get through this okay, huh?
This one's
We're going to start with the approval of minutes from our February 4th meeting. It looks like, was it really a month ago that we last met? Wow. Any changes or edits to the minutes? No? I had none either, so we have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passed unanimously. Okay. We're going to go ahead and we've got a couple of orders of business tonight to talk about. Lucy's going to start with a commission membership update, and then we're going to talk about a special chart she has.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure why commission membership is on there, but I will give you an update. Many of you actually already know that a couple of weeks ago we, or was it last week? I can't remember. We held interviews. We had 14 applicants. 3 people dropped out, and we had 1 telephone interview because the person was going to be out of town. So we were looking to interview for 2 expired council terms, 2 vacant council terms, and 1 alternate position. We've made a recommendation to the mayor, and the mayor makes a decision this month. And I think at the second council meeting of the month, it'll be approved by the council, and then people will be notified.
Thank you. Do you want to move on to the?
Yes.
Oh, any questions from the commission, though? No. Okay. Thank you.
Mike's going to hand out this handy dandy chart. So, as you may remember, we've been talking for a while about having a tool that would support you guys when you're reviewing. And we have been working on that. What is being handed out is the same thing that's up on the screen. The same thing up on the screen. Thank you. The same thing up on the screen. Had to turn it on. My voice carries. I don't really need the microphone except for him. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm going to talk you through a couple of pieces around a preliminary plat because that's what you're doing tonight. In May, the first meeting in May 6th, we'll confirm this. Ted Hunter, who is the city's hearing examiner, is coming in to do a training for this commission, the Development Commission, several other groups will be in. He's going to kind of start with the Constitution and move forward and give you a lively presentation on the legal underpinnings of the work you do. And then I'm hoping that then the second half of that meeting will be just for you guys and going through this with the new commissioners. So if you start at the top, the first piece, the first paragraph that's up there is the piece from the city code that describes what you do. And the second piece talks about what when you're doing an urban village proposal, like for a development agreement, what the role is, your role is. But the main piece to look at for tonight is this second column. See if I can highlight it. So tonight you're doing a preliminary plat. You're doing what's called a long plat or long subdivision, because there's also short plats that are 4 lots or less. So the threshold's 4 lots. You're dividing a piece of property into more than 4. And you are making a recommendation to the council or hearing examiner. You're making a recommendation on a quasi-judicial matter. We've talked a little bit about that. The hearing examiner, Ted Hunter, will also talk more about that. You're reviewing it for compliance with city and state criteria and with the development agreement. The state law is the 5th row down, and that lists all the things that in state law you're required to review for with a preliminary plat. And then down at the bottom, the last row is the pieces from the city code of what you're supposed to be doing, the criteria you're reviewing for a preliminary plat.
Surprise, surprise, I have a question. Parcels it's funny because we're looking at something that has 3 parcels. Does the definition of parcel change? So this says we're looking at something into more than 4 parcels?
So in this case, parcels is, I'm using it generically, 4 pieces of 4 lots, 4 parcels, 4 blocks, 4 pieces that could be separately sold and handled.
So, yes, it can change a little bit then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's not, it's not like a big P. And you're starting with 3 parcels. You're right. And that, but even if you were starting with 1, any one of those is being divided into too many pieces to be handled as a short plat.
Okay.
So I realize you haven't gotten to see this very much. All I'm suggesting is you test drive it a little bit tonight. We're going to dig in, as I said, in a month. And by test drive, just see if it's useful to you, if you want different information, if this maybe isn't the right way to do this. And we'll have an opportunity to spend some more time on this in the future. But I just thought I'd give it to you to start trying, so you might have an opportunity to figure out if it's what you need.
Great. You have a question?
Lucy, just in the IMC 1806 paragraph, it talks about sites being greater than 15 acres, but then down below it's a threshold of 3 acres.
So the 1806-120 is if you're doing a development agreement. So a development agreement has to be more than 15 acres, which is a good point of something I need to put over here. So a site development permit isn't a development agreement, so it doesn't have to be 15 acres, but it has to be 3 acres to come to you. And this is exactly the kind of conversation, and it's going to help me make sure that I'm got stuff clear on here.
Thank you.
Anything else? Great.
No, after 14 years on the commission, now I know what I'm doing.
Exactly. I knew someone was going to say that.
Yeah, it's still questionable. Okay. All right. Thank you, Lucy. Let's go ahead and move on to the agenda item with the preliminary plat of Talus parcels 7 through 9. Are we starting with Mike?
Yes.
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. We're doing the parcels 7, 8, and 9 preliminary plat. I will kind of do my regular gig and give you a general overview of the project. Feel free to stop me at any time if you have questions. Happy to answer them.
I'm guessing you might need to be a bit closer. It's a little hard to hear, Mike.
Are you not hearing? Sorry. So one point of clarification. This plat is, right now it's 2 parcels, parcel 6C and parcel 9. Those are the 2 parcels that are being subdivided. Parcels 7, 8, and 9 are development parcels as identified in the development agreement. Today, they're not technically legal parcels. So we'll start with a little bit of orientation. The blue area identifies parcels 7, 8, and 9 in Talus. You can kind of see, find my cursor. You guys all know Talus. This site's located in the highest reaches of the project at the top of Talus Drive, and I'll get a little bit in more with the roads in a moment. To the west, you have Cougar Mountain Regional Wildland Park. To the south, you have parcels 10 through 12 and the native growth protection area that was supplied with Talus at the very beginning of the project. Parcels 6 is to the west. The actual development won't go all the way to the blue line. There's kind of a vegetative buffer, per se, that will be in the middle there, and you'll see the lot layout here in a moment.
So, and I just want to point out, because This will the last time you'll see north up.
Oh, gosh, thank you. So the way the drawings work out, it just makes more economic space sense-wise to put them with north now facing to the right. And you'll see that here at the next slide. A little bit of overview, 334.75 acres. The 3 development parcels, parcel 7 will have 56 lots. These are going to be bigger lots. Parcel 8, also bigger lots, small in terms of the lot count, 7. And then per the development standards, medium density in parcel 9, 90 units slated to be 0 lot line townhomes. And I believe there's 19 buildings containing those units. 16 tracks within the project for utilities, open space, recreation, and such. And then jumping in, the big thing about this plat is topo, lots of topography, and there's plenty of walls in this project. It's on the side of a mountain, so there's some walls to carve out the developable areas. I'm not sure these photos will be terribly effective because it's just really hard to get into the site right now and get great photos, but I'll do what I can here. Number 1's coming up Talus Drive at the intersection with Shangri-La Way. The middle of parcel 9, which you'll see in a moment, is going to be right beyond the T intersection there. That'll go straight up. And then parcel 8 will be directly above that, kind of that stand of trees that's in the background. And then to the right of that up will be parcel 7. Parcel 7's the highest parcel. Number 2 is taken from the entry to the parcels 10 through 12 development, the bridges, and you can see an existing reservoir there. And on the right side of that loop road, which is the extension of Shangri-La Way, is parcel 9. Number 3 is taken from where the lots in parcel 8 will be, and you can see from the orientation map there. And then number 4, again, I just threw this one in at the reservoir. It's up there, and you guys should be aware of it. Any questions on kind of the site and layout? So I did mention that there's some significant topography on this site. We drew up this map just to kind of show you. Parcel 9 down there on the left is the lowest parcel in the project, and it starts out at about 500 feet. And then as you go up to the northwest, the corner of the project's all the way up at around 850. So we're up over 300 vertical feet of elevation. It's a lot of gain there. This kind of shows it a little bit more in parcel 9 down there on the left. So let me get you reoriented here. Parcel 9 here, the lowest one. Parcel 8, and then the large one up here, parcel 7. And I'll show you the roads in a moment. You can see kind of some of the elevation gain, 120 feet top to bottom to top and at 9, and then 240 feet in parcel 7. Another thing to note that so the existing homes down in parcel 6, these homes will be about 140 feet above, and there's going to be a wall there, which you'll see here in a moment. So these are the walls. There's 2 types of primary walls, proposed fill walls and terraced walls. Here are the fill walls. The most prominent of them being down here at parcel 7. This is a tall wall. It ranges in height from 29 to 48 feet. 48 feet at its highest, and it just kind of ranges all along there. If you want to see the exact dimensions, you can flip to pages 7 through 9 in the drawings, and the wall heights are identified. Yes?
Just for reference, the wall that's behind Home Depot, any idea how high that wall is? Just for some reference point?
30 feet?
So
There are some walls in Talus now in parcels 5 that are in the 30-foot range. This one will be a little bit taller than that, for sure. And then, I didn't identify the heights on the rest of the walls, but I'll just tell you. Generally, they're 20 feet or less. The one this wall right here is in the 20 to 30 foot range. I think actually maybe it goes up to 26, and then the rest are shorter. But again, if you really want to know exactly, just flip to pages 7 through 9. You'll see those. And then there's two other types of walls. The terraced walls, I've identified those areas in purple. Those will be shorter walls that are terraced. Yes. Oh, did you have a question, Michael? Oh, sorry. You see the terraced walls there, and then lastly, the plans did show some rock walls, which are typically shorter walls, and you see those in green. We'll get on here to the roads and the sidewalks. That's what this drawing shows. The black dot is the extension of Talus Drive, taking a left to Shangri-La Way. And where it stops and becomes the red line is where the new road is proposed to pick up. That's a neighborhood collector until it becomes green. All the rest of the roads in the plat are proposed as neighborhood streets. And then there's a couple, I just showed them as kind of access roads leading up to reservoirs. One existing and then one proposed in parcel 7. All of the roads will have sidewalks. In some places, the sidewalks have been dropped on one side to accommodate less clearing, or less grading rather. But in those circumstances, they're not ped access on all of the streets. Two types of trails proposed. One, neighborhood trails. In parcel 9, the concept is a neighborhood hill climb, and a lot of it will be stairs, I believe, with little lookouts kind of perched along the way. That's classified as a neighborhood trail, which is a wider trail. And then there's a second neighborhood trail proposed leading out of 9 up to one of the recreation pads, which is proposed on top of a stormwater retention vault lid. And the applicant will talk a little bit more about some of their ideas for that. Secondly, we have forest paths. And all these are new. And you can see the connection to the existing Shangri-La Trail to the north. And then one of the trails here, the bottom one, will be below the wall, will tie into the Surprise Creek Trail. And there's a couple other connection points. This comes down to this trail, which will be at the base of this wall. And then another connection here at the top of 7 up to Shangri-La Trail.
Hey, Mike, real quick.
Yeah.
So are those below the wall?
Yes, both.
Okay. Thanks.
Mike, if I may, if we're going to talk about this later, I'll just table it. But I know right now the trail goes right in front of those water towers, the 2 water towers at the very top that connects to Shangri-La Trail. Is that going to be removed?
I will have to get back to you on that. I don't know the answer to that.
All right.
Well, and maybe ask the applicant too. They may know when,
Very good.
when they covered in their presentation.
All right. Thank you.
By the way, if anyone from the public wants to speak, if you can please sign in on the sign-in sheet, and we'll have an opportunity for public comment. We'll have an opportunity to address any concerns that come up tonight in a briefing response memo that we'll issue a week from today. And then that briefing response memo will be presented at the following public hearing on April 15th. Open and recreation spaces. 2 primary ones. This one down here in parcel 7 is in tract O, and it's generally a flat pad. In the plat review, we don't get terribly deep into the amenities that are provided, rather just that they are provided and they're adequate. But I think the applicant may have some ideas that they wish to share, and there is some discussion in the staff report. The second recreation space is, again, atop the vault lid that's proposed here in parcel 8. This one will be pretty central to parcels 8 and 9, so they'll have something close. And then there's a couple smaller ones. A little guy here in parcel 7, it's got some topo to it, so it might I think they're talking about like a at-grade slide or something. And then again, there's several little areas of respite, you could say, along this trail. Again, this trail through parcel 9 is going to climb 100 feet, right around there. So there'll be little lookouts, probably akin to the hill climb trail, the new one in Issaquah Highlands. And then the fun part, that kind of concludes my overview. Not a terrible lot of conditions in this report, but we do have some unique ones, and I'll read those for you.
Mike,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. Just for clarity, the hill climb stairs in Highlands, is that the one that's right behind the Home Dick's
And Dick's.
Sporting Goods?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think this one will probably be, it's shown as more curved. It's not kind of just a straight shot,
Right.
but it does have those kind of little perched lookouts, you know, for people to take a
For,
break.
for people that are interested, they can look at that and get some idea of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It has one perch after you're almost all the way to the top when we walked it the other night, so.
Okay. We'll read some conditions now. Number 2, at final plat, a mechanism for ensuring the preservation of the westerly buffer in tract D, as well as an easement for protection of the steep slope therein shall be provided. 3, at final. Oh, sorry. Starting on page 28. Number 3, at final plat, irregular or pie-shaped lots and lots that are narrow in the front shall be adjusted to ensure that the homes have a strong relationship with the street. For example, this condition will require an adjustment to the shape or building placement and/or design of Lot 6 in Parcel 7 and Lot 4 in Parcel 8. 5, the applicant shall use varied building setbacks, modulations, and building facades, architectural details, and colors to provide added interest and character to achieve a more appropriate mountain village character. 6, the landscaping for Tract G between Parcel 8 and Shangri-La Way shall be designed so that views from lots 1 through 5 are framed, but there remains a continuation of the open space character established in Tract D adjacent to Shangri-La Way. And if you guys need clarification on anything, just let me know. Number 8, where it is not practical to terrace walls, long and/or tall walls will be articulated, add visual interest to the community, and use landscape to soften the wall and transition the scale of the wall where pedestrians are nearby. For instance, at the base of the eastern wall in Parcel 7, landscaping, which includes the use of coniferous trees where feasible, shall be placed between the base of the wall and the trail in order to reduce the wall's scale and presence to pedestrians. This will be reviewed with the wall permits and the landscape permit. 8,
Mike,
Yes.
on that one, so I was asking about the trail next to the wall. So is this saying that you'll have the wall, the trail, and then the landscape? Or will the landscape
This is
block
saying
the
that-
wall from the trail?
this is saying there's going to be landscape between the trail and the wall.
Between the base of the wall and the trail? Okay, great, thanks.
Something to provide just a little buffer for
Okay.
people.
Thank you.
Number 11. Prior to issuance of any utility permit that allows the construction of impervious surfaces, the design work necessary to generate stormwater treatment capacity in the P5 detention pond and P5 sand filter must be approved by the city. The associated work must be completed prior to issuance of the first building permit. The designated official may consider accepting surety to alter the completion date based upon a plan to have necessary facilities in place consistent with the development agreement, master drainage plan, and stormwater generation. 14. The constructed walls that are proposed on the western project boundary must be designed to accommodate revegetation plantings without landscaping or irrigation restrictions. The intent is to revegetate immediately adjacent to the walls with deciduous Douglas fir and cedar trees that can be allowed to grow to a full mature height. This will be reviewed with the site work permit for walls and with the landscape permit. 17. Per AMM 14-00002, the Parcel 8 Road and Tract F, Drive B, must be widened as necessary in order to provide sidewalk and planter facilities. This condition will be verified with the final plat. 21. Prior to issuance of the first building permit, the applicant must submit and receive approval both from Issaquah and Department of Health. Yeah, that's right. Design report that identifies the details of the water supply system to serve parcels in the upper, presumably 906 pressure zone. The report must detail the redundant storage and supply facilities and how they comply with codes and standards.
Isn't that 22? You skipped 21.
Oh, my apologies. 21? 22 is a freebie, I guess.
It's on your list, so you're.
Okay.
you're
I'm
good.
not reading it again. Almost done here. 21. With the final plat, Tract O recreation and open space tract will be increased in size, or another area within Parcel 7 shall be provided in order to accommodate for a more usable and diverse variety of recreation activities. In either case, the Parcel 7 tract identified for recreation will be graded flat, though it may be terraced into 2 or 3 flat usable pieces. 22 I just read, on to 23. 3 more. Building permits for combustible construction served by the 916 reservoir may be issued as soon as the 916 reservoir is online, full of water, and the water mains serving any specific parcel are connected to the 916 reservoir. Building occupancy may not occur until the water system is accepted by the City of Issaquah. 25. At final plat, Tract A, C, D, J, K, M, N, O, and P, as well as any other tracts that have trails or recreation facilities, shall allow public access on the trails in perpetuity if the tracts containing the trails or rec facilities are privately owned. And last but not least, 26. With any clearing and grading work that would result in plant removal, the applicant shall provide an opportunity for plant salvage consistent with the Wildlife Habitat Network Preservation Plan. That concludes my presentation. Happy to take questions or hand it off to the applicant.
Any questions before?
Can I just ask a quick question? Can you point out where the proposed reservoirs are?
Certainly. Well, I'll show it to you on this map. So currently there's 2 reservoirs here just west of Parcel 8, and the new ones, if you see my cursor, are proposed in Parcel 7, kind of along that same line.
Those will be additional reservoirs
Those are proposed, yes.
as new.
As new.
additional, and,
Yep.
the other ones will stay there.
The other ones will stay.
Michael?
But reading that, I mean, nothing's going to happen here until those are done? Is that what that,
Building residences cannot, no one can live in the homes until those reservoirs are online because they provide fire flow. So construction can start, but no occupancy will be granted until those are online and accepted by the city.
okay, thank you. And then I had a question about 25, about the public access on the trails in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Thank you. The way I'm reading this is that this takes place after construction, so during construction or before the trail heads could be moved or relocated?
Well, let me read this. So yeah, what we can do on the final plat is identify those as relocatable trail easements or access easements.
Okay.
And then those get finalized with the actual permit for construction.
Okay, so expectation is those trails may change, but there will be access to them?
The expectation is that the configuration can't be fully identified until we get out there and kind of map it out, but the trails themselves must be provided.
Okay, thank you.
And they're going to be in those tracks. So it's probably the track that's going to have the access, not the exact trail path.
So the applicant can answer that question, hopefully, to better
Sure.
detail? Okay.
And then I did want to maybe discuss later about how the utility and recreation plots like Track Zero, how those are going to be multi-use areas. It seems that the proposed recreation areas are also utility vaults for water, or I'm not sure what they are, but that'd be kind of nice to have some discussion on that,
Certainly.
so that I want to make sure that, or I'd like to be sure that those are actual recreation areas and not just a flat piece of ground.
I think the applicant has some stuff prepared for some of the ideas they're proposing.
Okay, thank you. And then I think there's an issue here about sprinklers with roads over 15% grade. And do you know if there are houses that are identified that would have sprinklers in them if this plan were to go forward?
So there's no roads in this plat proposed over 15%.
Okay.
That will get verified with the utility permit, and in the event that a road did exceed 15%, that would trigger automatic sprinklering of all homes uphill from that, or at the point where it exceeds 15%.
Okay.
Serviced
don't-
by that road, by the same road?
Right. I don't think it would be in the applicant's interest to construct a road over 15%, so none of those are proposed.
Okay.
And I think that really is an important point to say, is that there's just, the intent is that no road will be constructed over 15%. However, once a road's constructed, we're not asking them to rip it out if it's wrong.
Okay.
The houses would be sprinkled. That's just the consequence if they're not constructed as required.
Yeah, for reference, I know that, not Northwest Talus Drive, but there's one road further north, and I believe we talked about this before, that's 15%, I believe.
There are some of what we called the secret roads, that were kind of extra little connections that they weren't required for circulation, they weren't required for fire access, and they were allowed to be steeper. But any road that is considered required had to be 15% or less.
Okay. And then one final question, Mike.
Sure.
The wall between parcel 7 and parcel 8 on the, I guess it's the western portion, parcel 8, the one that the bottom says 700 feet there.
Yes.
Why would that wall be constructed there at the top of the development, or at the top of parcel 8?
Parcel A.
8.
Oh, 8. I'm going to hand that one off to the applicant.
Okay.
I think they can answer that one better than I can.
Okay, I think Jim has a
Thanks.
question. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks. You just on condition number 14, I'm thinking that I might have read something in Mr. Kapler's comments, but let's see, revegetate immediately adjacent to the walls with deciduous Douglas fir and cedar trees. Grow to a full mature height. Maybe the applicant can speak to it, I'm not sure, but do you really want to have a fully grown Douglas fir up against a retaining wall?
So I think the expectation there is that, I think what that condition's stating is that when those walls are designed, they need to be designed to accommodate whether or not it's a full giant mature tree or maybe it's a smaller tree, but we need a chance to identify that, and there will be an expectation during the permit review that appropriate landscaping is provided to kind of screen those walls.
So this is more to engineer the wall
Right.
sufficiently to handle that. Okay, thank you.
Carl, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is for Mike or the applicant, but I noticed on our sheet that the applicant is listed as Trad Associates, that I'm going to call in quotes the engineering firm, which seemed a little unusual to me. I don't know if we've ever had that before. I wondered if
I
there was any
can
comment.
explain that, and I'm sure they can expound. A lot of times it's not uncommon for the group preparing the plans to act on behalf of the applicant. I went ahead and put Triad, but I just as well could have put Talus Management Services or J.R. Hayes and Sons, who's the owner of the property. Triad's acting on behalf for them.
Thanks.
So So that brings up the question, I mean, when the name applicant or the word applicant comes up throughout the process, if there's a responsibility of the applicant, that usually means a property owner.
So on this preliminary plat application, the actual physical application form was signed by Al Furry. And that's why I went ahead and put him. Al's can speak on behalf of the applicant, but the true applicant per se is also here. And I'm sure he would be willing to answer questions as well.
I guess what I'm saying is if there's something down the road where the agreement states that the applicant or the owner, obviously, it would be then the owner, not the applicant. I just want to make sure
Yeah,
we're
for
clear on
example,
that.
there was a question that came in from public comment beforehand that was talking about maintaining slopes and walls and things.
Exactly.
Is that the property owner or the engineering firm, isn't it?
It's a good point of clarification. I think maybe next time I might do this a little different. I mean, I have applicant listed on here. That was the person that signed the application. Then the legal owners listed below that, and then the engineer. I think it's a good point to raise. I think
I want to add for the public to be able to make a distinction that Triad is an engineering firm.
Correct.
And that the developer is not Triad.
that's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions before we bring the applicant/owner up? All right. Al, Mr. Furry?
Al Furry, not owner. Yeah, our firm has acted on behalf of Dan Hayes and his group, who is the master developer at Talus, the owner of these remaining parcels, who's the proponent, the actual really applicant of record in terms of those things that you would put in place, binding them. We're applying for the permit on his behalf. And I wanted to introduce Dan because it's always good to hear from the owner proponent, and then I'll be back up in a second.
Okay, here I am. Thanks, you guys, for spending your night hearing about our project. Dan Hayes, am I supposed to say my address too? 15600 Issaquah Hobart Road, Issaquah 98027. Second generation family to Issaquah. Dad was a graduate of Issaquah High School. Predominantly our business has been the civil heavy construction business for 30-some years. That's probably where most of you know J.R. Hayes and Sons. Worked at Issaquah Highlands. We were for 14 years on all the projects up there. We were on Talus since its inception in the late 90s, and happened to be the third guy in that got the balance of the land, and that's what we're here in front of you today to talk about trying to get developed. So we certainly appreciate everybody spending the time, and now I think I'll hand it off to Ryan. Are you going up again?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes.
Yeah, Al Furry with Triad. So I first wanted to introduce the folks that we have here tonight that are going to be available to answer questions later. Ryan Coleman with Triad will be presenting. We have Ted Shepper with Terra Associates. If there's any questions on the walls, grading, slope stability, all those kinds of things. And we have Sue Jensen with Triad, who's been involved. She's the head of our landscape architecture site design group, who's been involved in a lot of the recreational design features. And with that, Darren Pugh, my boss, the manager for the Talus, for the LLC that's proponent of this development. So with that, I'll pass it on to Ryan.
Ryan's been here before. He's afraid to come back up, I think.
Trying to hide a little bit. Okay, I'm ready. Ryan Coleman, Triad Associates, representing the applicant, Dan Hayes. And what I'm going to do, in between clearing my throat and coughing a little bit tonight, is providing you guys with a little bit of color to the preliminary plat. As Lucy kind of started off the meeting and as Mike went through, when you guys get a preliminary plat, you're kind of looking at sort of legal standards that have been set forth in the development agreement and city code and state law. And while there are, lots of sheets, and I think in this particular application, it's, 17 different sheets that you guys get to look at that have roads and utilities and lot layouts and grading and a little bit of landscape. It doesn't really give you a really good sense of color of what the remainder of the Talus community is going to look like. So my hope tonight is to give you a little bit of that, give you something to chew on. And my hope is to, keep this a little bit brief, but I definitely want to invite you to, if you have any questions, just pipe right up. A lot of you recognize me from a little over a year ago, and just want to kind of open that dialogue. So this is the landscape plan that you got in your plans. We provided a little bit of color to it, and I'm just going to kind of walk through. I think two things that are kind of interesting to mention about these parcels 7, 8, and 9 is the last remaining development parcels within Talus. So basically, with this project, now Talus as a master planned mountain village development will finally be realized, and I know that's something that's really exciting for Dan. It's something exciting for Triad. We've been working on this for close to 20 years, and I imagine it's pretty exciting for city staff as well, who have been working on it just as long. And parcels 7, 8, and 9, kind of in their outset, were again envisioned as residential parcels. Parcel 7, kind of at the top of the hill, as Mike talked about, slightly larger lots, low density, single family. What's interesting about parcels 8 and 9, as Talus kind of moved through its development, those parcels were actually envisioned to be slightly higher density. I think that was mentioned in Mike's staff report a little bit. Parcel 8 was going to be a medium density residential development, probably more of an attached kind of condition. But given the way Talus kind of developed out, the land area and the topography just kind of made that a little bit too challenging. And so the concept of going to a low density, detached residential, larger lot, kind of take advantage, to respond to the topography and take advantage of it for views was the right decision. Similarly, with parcel 9, was actually slated to be high density, right there, kind of at the view terminus of Talus Drive, 3 to 5 story multifamily, a little bit more dense, 24 units plus to the acres. And again, looking at the parcel and the topography, it just didn't make sense. It was going to be really difficult to try and make that happen. And from an overall community standpoint, it just felt like the vision felt a little bit better to have it as an attached townhome. So here north is up, and this is parcel 9 kind of turned on its side, Shangri-La Way here with Talus Drive roughly. Can you guys see my cursor? Okay. Shangri-La Way, Talus Drive going down the hill roughly here. Here is, you can kind of see a little bit of the intersection with the Bridges development, part of the internal road for parcel 9. But what we wanted to highlight here, this is the hill climb that Mike talked a little bit about, and that was mentioned, kind of similar to the hill climb behind Dick's Sporting Goods, which I think was put there for a reason. People walk up it, they get hot and sweaty, they walk back down to Dick's, get some Nike Fit gear or something. But this is going to be a little bit more of a woody, kind of think Whistler kind of village. It's not straight up the hill. There are, because of the topography, lots of opportunities for resting points. Here we got one here with a view pretty close to straight down Talus Drive. You're looking out to the west there. You're looking out at Issaquah Highlands. Again, moving up the hill climb, you've got a number of other areas. This is a larger one, kind of right in the middle, with a few more amenities. And, you know, this isn't showing up great on my screen, not real great on that screen. Hopefully it's looking a little better in your guys' handouts there. But again, it's basically to kind of provide a connection between the two sides or ends of Shangri-La Way. Gives you kind of an interesting way to move through Parcel 9, provide some community amenities, things like that. Also within Parcel 9, at the northern end of Parcel 9, which is now to the right of the drawing, we thought it'd be kind of a nice idea, because these are townhomes, a little bit smaller, maybe wouldn't have quite as much outdoor living space, to provide a community outdoor living space for this development. So there could be, you know, some picnic tables, there'd be a little seating wall for just some informal seating, maybe a little bit a barbecue for a night like tonight. It would have been nice to go out, throw whatever you like to grill on the fire. And this also kind of serves as maybe a little bit of a jumping off point to one of the other neighborhood trails that Mike mentioned. This one goes back to, just 1 second, I'll go back to my overall map here. So we were looking at this area right here. You go across the street, and the neighborhood trail skirts up the northern side of Parcel 9 back up to this larger community area here. So that's what this neighborhood trail would do. It's again, it's taking up quite a bit of topography, so there would likely be some stairs there, and we'll show you some more images of what that could look like. Here you go. So here are some of sort of the plaza areas, the little resting areas where you might have, again, some informal seating. You've got to address safety and accessibility, you know, fall protection. So you got to have some sort of handrail, things like that. But you know, there could be some other fun, passive things, like maybe a little checkerboard. Maybe, you know, maybe the homeowners association provides some markers, or maybe just get some pebbles and play on the ground like that. And then here are some examples of other hill climbs that have been fairly successful in the area. This is in Seattle. I think this is the Jackson Park. Lucy probably knows this better than I do. Okay. Is that right?
The one on the upper right, that's High Point?
Yes, correct.
I'm not sure if that's Jackson Park.
Okay.
Sorry.
Probably making my landscape architect cringe a little bit.
I'm getting a D right now on the thing.
Yeah. Anyway, so the idea here is that it's not a really urban kind of facility. Like I said, think Whistler Village. You know, these are kind of nice. These I think were actually done in the upper parts of Issaquah Highlands, where you've got a timber framed stair and gravel inside. They actually wear pretty well, pretty easy to maintain. Some other community gathering areas, in some areas where you're taking up topography, you can do these informal, use some rockeries and create little amphitheaters. You know, here's an example of what a barbecue pit could look like. Just kind of some other plaza type features. And again, these are just to kind of give you guys an idea of what these things might look like. You know, we haven't gotten down into the design detail of this. So I want to move on to some of the more active recreation pieces. That the stuff in Parcel 9 is a great community attribute, but does kind of lend itself more to a sort of passive use. One of the conditions in the staff report that Mike read was that the active recreation area at the entrance to Parcel 7 become enlarged. So you can kind of see this. This is a before. This is that tract there. Whoops. and this is an after. So the old tract was roughly about that size. It's about double the size now. And we did that in response to staff's condition, but also to provide, again, a better amenity for the community. This is proposed to be terraced a little bit, similar to the lots. It will still have to utilize some wall to keep it up to grade. This lower area is a nice sort of linear feature where you could use it to kick a ball or throw a ball.
Ryan, what are the approximate dimensions of that lower flatter area?
Do you know, top of your head? There you go. This is about 100 feet here. So my guess this is probably about 150. So 100 by 150-ish.
Okay, thank you.
We can certainly get you
Yeah,
some more
I see the scale here now.
some more info on that.
But the actual flat part is not going to be, obviously it's not going to be that, it's not going to be 100 feet wide, is it?
No, I would say this is probably about ranging
60.
from 20 to 30 feet wide.
40.
Just kind of looking at this scale here,
Yeah, okay,
by at least 100 120 feet or so
thank you.
in length.
What would be the height of the wall that's to the east
This one?
in the view wall? Yeah.
Well, this is a fill wall, so this area is sitting up above the trail.
Right.
So there would need to be some kind of fall protection or a fence.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Maybe, yeah. But are you thinking in terms of the view, or?
Well, I'm thinking in terms of you talk about that as an area for linear sports along that line, and if somebody's a little bit errant, how far down do they have to go to get their ball? Forget it.
It's part of the active
Collect
recreation.
Bottom of the hill.
You got to hike down the street, go down the trail.
Yeah.
No, that's a valid point. Somebody, tossing a ball with a younger person could go over the fence. So again, there'll be some good views into this portion from Shangri-La Way. This is going to be elevated a little bit. You can have some seating. This area is intended to provide a compact kind of play structure. And I've got some pictures that can kind of explain that a little bit. Moving a little bit further into parcel 7, we saw kind of an interesting opportunity along Shangri-La Way. And going back to my overall plan, so we were here, and we moved up Shangri-La Way. We're here in this tract. There's some topography in this corner, and we thought, well, it'd be kind of neat to do some in-ground things using the topography to our advantage. So something like a hillside slide here. Something like this was done up in Issaquah Highlands, where the slide is kind of at grade. I've taken my kids up there; they love it. Another thought here would be maybe a dry rock creek bed. Maybe it sometimes flows during some stormwater events. Another kind of pedestrian resting spot. Again, recognizing that as people are walking up the hill, maybe they just like to take a pause and take in the views and that kind of thing. And then the last piece is kind of the real big central community gathering area. This is the one that has been talked about as being on top of the stormwater detention vault. And it's making use of a large flat area that doesn't really exist in Talus and doing something kind of fun with it. So here it's proposed that there could be some parking, which would provide kind of year-round access to this picnic shelter. So this would be a covered area that would have some barbecues and some tables, and maybe off to the side of that table you've got, maybe a that checkerboard thing, or maybe there's an all-weather ping pong table or something over here that provides another or caters to another demographic that's likely going to be in these projects. And then you've got quite a bit larger, flat, grassy area that you could have more of a active recreation piece to it. Again, still lots of opportunities for views. You can see it's tied into the trails a little bit. I've got a separate slide. I want to talk a little bit about trails a little bit later. But these are some of the active pieces that I talked about, like the in-ground slide coming down using the topography. Kind of some fun, you know, if you've got a small space where you can put something in, these really neat things for kids to test balance, jump up and down on. My boys would have figured something else to do with that, make it dangerous. Or you can find these really neat treehouse-like structures, which really capture a kid's imagination. They can be for climbing, for camping out in, not camping. I'm sure probably wouldn't comply with the HOA rules. And then here's like an all-weather ping pong table kind of thing. So just, you know, these are some of the fun things that we'll get to play around with as we move through the project and we work with city staff to find the right level of amenities to propose in these areas. I talked a little bit about maybe a dry creek bed or something that runs intermittently during some stormy seasons. Other plaza areas, maybe on top of that vault, can be used for some yoga sessions, which would be kind of nice. You'll be looking out over some nicely wooded area. Could be very calming if you're into that kind of thing. So the trails that Mike talked about, I want to talk a little bit about these black lines here, the solid black lines. These are existing trails within the Talus community now. And that's just to show kind of overall how the trail and sidewalk network is really being completed and well thought out. I think it's continuously continuous. Is that what we talk about, right, Lucy? Some of the off-site trails that have been constructed in the past, obviously these would remain. But up in Talus 7, 8, and 9, I'll kind of zoom in here a little bit. So one off-site trail connection that would be maintained is the Surprise Creek Trail. This exists today. There would be an addition to that trail at the bottom of the Parcel 7 wall, tying into Parcel 7, creating, again, another amenity for people that really want to take advantage of that trail. At the south end of Parcel 7, this part of the trail is existing today, but there would be some new connections from, obviously this road is going to cross it, so we've got to think about how that crossing is going to work. There would be a new connection to this reservoir access road up here. And the Parcel 9 trails tie into the sidewalks. They tie into other trails, the Bear Ridge Trail farther to the south, again providing continuous connection to the Shangri-La Trail.
So Ryan, the proposed 7, 8, 9 trails and the neighborhood trail, they're different characteristics, different trail styles, right? One of them is you call it forest?
Correct.
Forest trail?
Yes, correct. So these red trails, the dashed and the red dash trails, those are going to be forest trails, typically about a 4-foot wide tread with some shoulders on either side.
And the surface is?
Would be soft surface, mulch.
Okay.
You know, we've used the term hog fuel before, but not a hard surface.
Okay, and then the neighborhood trails will be the hard surface, what, 8 foot wide?
5
6
to
foot?
8, 5 to 8 foot. Yeah, just depending on how it gets designed.
Okay, thanks.
So Ryan, if I could just add, if this is the appropriate time to talk about trails, since you are, right now you have the whole west side of Talus that goes up northwest Talus and takes the existing road up to the towers, and then they just cross, there's a trail, they cross straight over to Shangri-La Way, or Shangri-La Trail. So
Talking about
that looks like that's going to be removed. And
yes.
and so I would like the applicant to maybe have a consideration of a small crossover
From
as you're going up, I don't know the name of the road. If you're going up Drive B, yeah, go straight over. If you're going up Drive B, possibly, unless you got reason not to.
Alfrey Talus resident and active trail user. I've seen you up on the trails before. So are you talking about the reservoir road
Right, right.
that goes up
There's
to
a
the
lot of-
reservoir, and then at the very end, it cuts over,
Yeah, just-
and then you can go up that trail to connect to Shangri-La Trail, right?
Right,
So essentially, that's the route of the new Shangri-La Road extension. So you'll follow the sidewalk up the new Shangri-La Road extension.
right.
And where it crosses the existing trail today, there'll be connections from the sidewalk to Shangri-La Trail to perpetuate that connection.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted, for clarity, particularly I know there's going to be there's two main access points to that trail besides the Bear Ridge access from Bridge. So I know it gets a lot of traffic and a lot of
Yeah,
people.
I'm super excited about the final connections to all the trails being made because
Right.
I sneak up there. There's no trespassing signs as you go up that path.
Which is
Now,
okay to
I say I know Dan Hayes, so I can go up there and trespass because he'll say it's okay. But this is going to be a great thing to have everything finally connected
Yes.
together, which was when we started talking about this in '96 and '97. You know how the whole thing would be complete.
Right.
So there's endless loops, and it's really cool. I love it.
The pictures look pretty good, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep.
I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to talk about in terms of kind of the amenities in the project. If there's any other questions?
Any question on the amenities, parks, trails, that sort of thing?
Or actually, let me. There were a couple of questions I wrote down earlier, so I'm going to stop you from asking questions right now. One was about access easements. I think what Lucy mentioned earlier was accurate. It's hard to kind of specify an easement for a trail, and probably what would happen is where those trails are within privately owned tracts, that tract would allow for public access across that trail. So if that trail gets modified or has to be moved for some reason, that public access would always go with that trail, and it would be like that in perpetuity. One question I wanted to come back to was, Michael, you asked about a wall in parcel 8. So, if I
Yeah,
could-
kind of looks like adjacent to Shangri-La Way and Drive B.
So this is the grading plan. So help me out. There's a wall proposed here. You can kind of see it. It's this thick black line. These numbers alongside it are calling out the bottom and the top of that wall. This is going to be a cut wall where material is going to be removed from the hillside. The wall is going to be a structurally engineered wall. Ted can tell you all about that, how they construct those. But this area is actually going to sit below the hillside. Is that? I'm struggling a little bit with the question, but
I think that's fair. But then you see that right there on the track D open space recreation utility? To the right of your cursor?
right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that proposed to be open space
Yes.
recreation? Okay.
Yes.
So we didn't see that anywhere on our drawings.
So for instance, one thing I glossed over, I probably shouldn't have, actually I didn't even mention it. So this is that tract D open space here. And on this sheet, in this landscape sheet, anywhere where it's this white area, those are areas that aren't going to be touched. So that's the existing vegetation that's there today, which in all of these areas is mature forest, will remain in place. There's nothing proposed to go through there except where this trail is existing. Yeah, basically there's nothing proposed in those areas. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. I was just I was reading some of the comments about stabilizing the slope. So that kind of led to that question about where the wall was there,
Okay.
or what it was there for, rather.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tim?
Is that, you say that that trail is existing, the Shangri-La Trail?
This one here?
I was just up there tonight, and it seemed to me there was a trail that was much farther to the south. I mean, is that just an unofficial connector?
So I can verify for you that this is existing Shangri-La Trail. And Bellevue High School kids used to drive over and have keggers down here.
Really?
Yeah.
Amazing.
It
How do you
was
know
a
that?
it was a logging road that went all the way over to Bellevue.
Is that his truck?
Dan
that,
Hayes told him.
No, the guy that lived right here who fed the bear told me that. And there was a junked car that they had pushed off the side of the road right here that had come from all the way over on the other side. But that's an old logging road that is now a trail that goes all the way up to an aircraft peak.
Eric?
Yeah, Ryan, I had a question. Just right now, you've shown some ideas of what the plan is. Can you maybe talk through the timeline as far as the public might have an idea when they could actually see what the actual plan will be? You know, as far as the recreational sites, so forth.
I think so. You know, so as Lucy mentioned kind of at the beginning, you guys get to see a little bit of this detail, but not a whole lot. And after the preliminary plat, what happens to these what happens in terms of the progression? Let me just kind of try and address it that way. So when the preliminary plat is approved, the next pieces that city staff will see would be construction permits, and those would be for clearing, for grading. They'll review detailed plans for construction of the walls, which will be accompanied with geotechnical studies addressing stability, things like that. They'll review civil engineering plans for the road and utilities. We'll be submitting administrative site development permits for these park areas that staff will review. They'll review that in context of the conditions for the preliminary plat, the planning goals and design guidelines, the development agreement, the park plaza and gathering area requirements of the development agreement. So while it doesn't necessarily go through a public process.
Right.
I mean, if somebody's interested and wants to follow the process, they can certainly reach out to staff and say, hey, where are things? How are things going? I've seen there's been some development up there. I'm kind of curious what you guys are looking at.
Yeah, like I said, right now we see a lot of good ideas, and I know a lot of the public would be interested to see what have an idea what the final outcome is, and they also want to be able to know, will they have any input? And I think you respond to that, where they could at least get into a mailing list or something.
So,
Thank you.
Ryan, you mentioned all of the recreational areas will go through at ASDP. So Lucy or Ryan, will we be seeing site development permits for each of these 3 neighborhoods or 3 plats? Parks?
So they're administrative site
All
development
of them.
permits because they're under 3 acres.
So we're not going to be able to talk about building, locations, parking, any of that stuff?
No, because that's the difference between a plat
Right.
and a site development permit. So that's why we like to have the concepts and talk through. I mean, we're trying to write performance conditions, show you concepts, have conversations, and then we are following through with the ASDPs, the administrative permit.
All right, so given that and not having that conversation, I just want to throw out what we talk about a lot, and that is parking. We can't get into details on this, obviously, but I just want to encourage people to think about the discussions we've had in the past, particularly in a location like this where you've got major topography challenges and thinking about how far people have to park, whether they're visitors, guests, when you're building these aprons and driveways. making sure that there's ample parking for the type of people that will live there, the type of people that will visit, and then additional services that come through, whether they be delivery services or whatever. So, yep. Okay. You most certainly can.
Sure.
You don't have to, but I'd like you to.
Darren Pugh with Talus Management Services. So I both manage the Talus Management Services as the master developer, as well as obviously the development side of these parcels that we own. Relative to your comment, very specifically, I know staff has been very diligent on your behalf in making us very aware of the concerns and past concerns of the parking. As a matter of fact, we've spent a significant amount of time on these plans, trying to address them to hopefully your satisfaction and certainly staff satisfaction, to knowing that that's been a concern. And so particularly in, I think, in parcel 9 where it's a little bit higher density, and we have in there, it's a little difficult to see, but we, in the design itself, meet the guidelines relative.
You're going to have to stand near the microphone. But if you use the mouse, you can use
Okay.
the mouse to point.
Great. Here. So on parcel 9, relative to the parking requirements, and we meet the parking requirements relative to percentage of tandem stalls, et cetera. We've done a analysis relative to the street parking, relative to parallels versus what we proposed in the street AMMs, and we've added additional parking kind of in spots throughout there to exceed the parking requirement, specifically on parcel 9, because that was a specific concern because of the higher density of the townhome concept. So just to wrap that up, we again have been counseled by staff that this is a very hot issue and has been in other developments, and so we've tried to accommodate those criteria within our proposal.
Thank you. I appreciate that explanation, and thank you to staff for carrying the torch. Appreciate it. Yeah, Michael.
Thanks. Ryan, 2 questions here. Is there a proposed build-out period for this? And then secondly, could you develop individual parcels here without building the other ones, or is this something that would have to be done concurrently?
I think the plat by itself is sort of logically set up to do it individually, but at this point, the owner's desire is to get going on construction. Again, in total, this is only 153 total residential parcels. Roughly about 10% of what's in Talus right now. And as we've been seeing and hearing in the news, the real estate market is pretty healthy right now, and there's a lot of demand for new construction and for new products. So their desire is to get going on everything. And I think if the stars align well, we could see construction start this summer, and probably with you want to finish that sentence for me? I'm stuck.
Yes, to finish that, our intention is to, again, start this season. We purchased the property in 2007. We had every hope that we would have been done and gone by this point, but obviously market conditions and economic conditions didn't allow for that. But we are preparing currently to move ahead with construction during this season for, at a minimum, parcel 7 and 8, and we're very hopeful for parcel 9. We anticipate parcel 9 going at the same time. The spine road, kind of parcel 7 and 8 and the spine road are kind of all connected relative to the construction. Parcel 9 can be constructed separately because it is kind of in its own area and has its own connections to Shangri-La that are already existing. So again, we anticipate that being done during this season and probably finalized by the end of the year, with then home construction would be starting towards the end of the year or into early next year is currently what we anticipate.
Okay.
And the only thing I would add is, it's a really good question, Michael, because while that's their plan and their goal, you're absolutely right. It could be built, they could change their mind tomorrow or sell them all, and 3 different people could build them at different speeds.
Okay.
So, or sit on them if they chose to do that. I'm not sure why they would. I'm not sure that changes our review of it, but it is important just to know that that's a possibility.
Yeah, because I'm looking at a 10-house development in my neighborhood that the guy said could take 4 years to build out, which is ridiculous, but that's my problem. So I just wanted to discuss one thing here, because you do plan on going ahead of this. Would the expectation be that all the property would be cleared? And then I know that starts a timer on the 6-month unimproved forest land, or however you want to call it, cleared land. I know there's a provision in there that if you clear land, we have like a 6-month period. I know we've seen that in other agreements that it has to be improved. It can't just be, cut down and left. Is that in this agreement?
I don't think that provision is in the Talus development agreement.
In terms of having to, if it sits idle for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
So the 6-month, I know the 3 years that is also mentioned, that's in city code. I don't know whether that, the other piece, exactly how it's written.
We had that in Bellevue College, Michael, is that?
Yeah.
We did. We've seen it some other places too.
That was actually the same question I have, because especially, in light of the recent mudslide problem and a lot of people attributing that to clearing of land above it and problems associated with that. I had exactly the same question. If you guys decide to clear it and then sell it and then somebody decides to sit on it, what are the provisions or the requirements for them over time to develop that, or improve it or shore it up or whatever is required?
Well, this is a point where I wish I had a current aerial, because what I would show you is that for the most part, where you see these lotted out areas, they were cleared about 7 or 8 years ago and have been that way for a while. Some volunteer landscape, alders, things like that. I think Mr. Kapler mentioned that there's been some invasive species that have kind of moved in, have grown up in their place. But again, the areas that are going to be developed have already been primarily cleared. There may be a little bit more clearing around the edges, which would hopefully address some of the invasive species, removing those. And Alfari has more to say.
Yeah, at the time it was logged 7 years ago or so, there's actually erosion control facilities still there from that era. There's a cutoff trench that runs basically along here to a sedimentation pond and an outlet pipe that comes down the hill. This is I think some folks were confused. This is it was a logging access road that was cut in that connects the reservoir road up to Shangri-La Trail. So there's actually drainage improvements down to a beehive grate. And during that phase, I was up on site observing the function of those features during, at the sort of the end of the season, springtime, a lot of March rain. And I was very pleased with how well those are all functioning. So I think we're in good shape. Also, this is a rock unit. The site is underlain with bedrock, and Ted could be more technical on this, but the recent slide in Oso was a big block of outwash sand on a old lake bed where the front was cut away by the river, and then water was added, and the whole thing slid across the clay. So this is as completely different as anything can be. As you walk along the trail, you can actually see the exposed bedrock. You can see it in here. You can also see it down in here. And it's very similar to the construction on 5D, which is the, I can't remember the neighborhood name of that, but could you bring that up, Ryan? The trail map. Yeah. So when we designed and constructed this neighborhood, I was out in the field and observed them digging down and basically keying into the bedrock and then building the MSE wall. And these MSE walls are essentially, they're as thick as they are high. So it forms a large gravity block that becomes immovable because of the friction between the fabric that's used to build the sections. And you know, this is one of my favorite places to walk the dog because you're down below the neighborhood. It's way up above you and you're down there quiet along the base of the wall, and it stood up very well. We had built many of the large walls, and they were in place during the Nisqually earthquake. So one of the first things we did was we went out, and there's some very tall walls here, and there's an enormous wall right here that nobody is really aware of because you just walk by on the sidewalk and you don't really think to look over. And so we went out immediately after that and inspected all the walls, and everything was good.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jim.
Two things. Number one, Lucy, I know I should know this, but what's the life's plan? What's your life's plan? What's the
Well,
lifespan?
how long do we have?
Of a plat?
A lifetime.
Oh,
Isn't it?
in terms of to build it out?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about, you know, if all the stars align, we need to protect against if none of the stars align. So what's the?
So if they did the preliminary plat, I think it has 3 years. But if they did the preliminary plat and then either bonded or constructed the improvements and did the final plat, once you've final platted, then, you know, that's forever.
Yeah. Okay.
A final plat is forever. That's kind of romantic, huh?
That's the life's plan. And then Al, you started talking about it. You know, I think obviously in a lot of the comments it was about the slide and how this might relate to it. And I'd like to find out a little bit more about the engineering that goes behind the retaining walls and, you know, how that works, tying into the bedrock, et cetera.
So we will, Ted Shepherd's with Terra Associates, they're our geotechnical engineer. They've also performed the critical area studies on all 3 of the parcels relative to the preliminary staff reports that are required. They'll be doing our wall engineering as well. Couple of other points just related to the grading and erosion control. You know, beyond the preliminary plat, you know, we also have then a construction review. There are stormwater and DOE requirements that we have to follow as far as general discharge permits. There, you know, city of Issaquah is, you know, certainly, again, just from a construction standpoint, very diligent on their erosion control issues. There'll be, you know, temporary erosion and sedimentation control plan that'll have to be implemented prior to grading. That'll include stormwater, you know, detention facilities, at least on a temporary basis. There are guidelines within the construction permits that require, you know, after a certain amount of days that you're open in the wet season, then you're required to cover those. There are certainly enforcement that goes along with that from the city staff perspective. So, you know, once you get a building or a construction permit and you're actually on site, then your inspectors and your city inspectors are going to be monitoring that and implementing enforcement required, which already really exists within the city code as far as the construction permits are concerned in that case. So that's kind of generally some of the process that happens during the construction component. And then I'll let Ted come up and address some of your questions regarding the stability and critical areas.
Thank you. While he's coming up, just to remind everybody in the audience who might not be familiar with our commission, we're not an engineering or technical review group. We're just asking some questions that probably concern you guys as well as us. So the explanation is very helpful, but we won't be able to address it any further than that. There are other provisions to do that. So thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners and general public. Ted Shepper with Terra Associates. Shepper spelled S as in Sam, C-H-E-P-P as in Paul, E-R, 12525 Willows Road, Kirkland, 98034. And yeah, the Oso landslide certainly has brought slope stability issues to the forefront, terrible tragedy. Al put it fairly simply, but he's absolutely right. The geology up in the Oso area where the landslide occurred is classic landslide geology. You have glacial lacustrine deposits that are stiff, overridden clays, above which are older outwash sand and gravel deposits. And it's actually classic landslide geology you see over in Seattle, the Perkins Lane area, Whidbey Island area where they had a large slide, I think a little over a year ago. In the Oso case has something a bit unique is there's a river running in front of it. The Still-Quamish flows through there. It forms somewhat of an oxbow. And so we had a combination of things. It was a known slide area. There's landslide areas mapped all over that area. I think you see reports in the paper where a geology couple, I think their name was Miller, talked about, they were surprised to see that the county had actually allowed people to build houses in that area. What happened there is a combination of toe cutting at the base of that slide, combined with record rainfall in March. 9.44 inches of rainfall set a record, but at SeaTac, I'm sure they got much more rain up there, and it was a deadly combination in a release. The other thing that comes into play is the hillside itself that slid up at Oso is probably, I think, elevation relief was around 300 or 400 feet. But the slide, the run out on this thing was over 2,000 feet, which is incredible. I talked to my colleagues and I said, if somebody would have came to me and asked me if I was going to build a house 1,000 feet away from that hillside, even if I know that hillside was unstable, would I be safe? My response probably would have been yes, because it's typical setbacks from toes of slides are equivalent to the height of the slope. I think what happened here, again, talking with my colleagues, is the run out was caused by it slid over a river, and so basically you have when slide slides down a hill, it slows down because of frictional resistance between the slide mass and the soil. Here we have basically a lubricated layer where there's no frictional resistance, which allowed for that to slide out as much as it did, which is really a tragedy. The Talus site is completely different. I mean, it's like Al said, it's bedrock. It's a Blakely Formation. Hard, competent rock. There are some what's called ice contact deposits that are kind of pasted up along the side of the mountain from when the glaciers advanced into the area and then retreated. Very stable materials. Our wall designs, we talked about them today. We are going to get going into them, but the base of these walls will be founded in the competent bedrock material. We'll be dig down to that, and so we have firm, stable foundations. The wall systems themselves are called mechanically stabilized earth wall systems. You see them pretty common around this area now. In fact, there's a fairly good-sized one on Highlands Drive going up just to the northeast of the hospital. Because you drive up to Highlands Drive, there's that tan wall that's up there. That's an MSE wall. We're going to be using a similar product here to build these walls. The reinforcing grids that go behind the walls are typically equivalent to the height of the wall. And so you're forming a fairly large gravity block to hold things in place. Drainage is a key component. We'll have drainage elements at the immediately behind the face of the wall, and then we'll also have drainage elements behind the grid zone, so that the gravity block itself will be completely isolated from having groundwater or surface water infiltrate into it. Drainage will be provided so that hydrostatic loading on the walls will be prevented. So The cut walls that are going to be going up some of the up to the west side, or excuse me, yeah, the west upper portion of parcel 7, and then on the north side of the road that we were talking about a little bit earlier, those will be soil nail walls. That's a process where excavation is made and we drive anchors back into the ground. Reinforcing steel is applied, and then a shotcrete face is applied to that. And that process is basically what's called top-down, and the walls are constructed as the excavation proceeds. So they're fully supported as the process goes. And those walls there'll be some aesthetic finish to the walls that kind of look like a quarry rock finish or something like that. I'm sure. I don't know what the plan, but anyway, that's how that is. So if there's any question, I'd be happy to answer anything I can.
That was great. Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, that was
Thank
good
you.
information. Thank you. When you engineer one of these walls, do you have landscape limits, what is prohibited to be planted near or by it?
Well, the tree thing came up, and that was kind of trees are not a good thing for walls. So that one kind of surprised me tonight. We're going to have to work that one out. So there are things that you can do. Trees growing behind a wall, particularly an MSC wall, root systems can actually push the wall face out. I've seen walls like where some alders get in behind the facing and they'll start growing out of the face of the wall. It's really not too much of a concern with overall stability of the systems because the workhorse is the grid. And the grid that goes back 30, 40 feet behind the face of the wall provides the stability. What can happen is if you start damaging the face, you may get a little bit of subsidence, face settlement, and a little bit of soil may pooch out from behind the wall, but overall stability of the wall would be intact. So, but the landscaping is an issue, and there's things you can do. You can put root guards in and things of that nature to try to keep the roots from impacting the wall design. But
I just thought of something here. So the grid is going to be underneath of the residences. Is that?
That's correct. Yes.
So the residents could plant a tree that over 20, 30 years could potentially interact with the grid.
Yeah, the root system interacting with the grid, again, if you think about it in terms of reinforcement, natural reinforcement, I mean, so the roots going into the grid system won't really impact that stability.
Thank you.
It's more at the wall face.
Eric, did you have something?
Not for him. I appreciate your explanation. It's
Okay.
great. But
Okay.
Thanks.
Right.
Any other questions here? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. What do you look at me like that for? Like, enough?
I did have a.
Well, I think, actually, before you go, I'll have you ask a question in a second. If anybody from the public would like to speak, I'm going to open up public comment in just a moment. If you could go ahead and put your name on the sheet if you haven't done so already. It looks like we have a few names on there. We'll get to that as soon as possible here. So, Eric?
I just had a quick question for the city engineer. I'm guessing that there's not going to be any additional access, and so the main entrance is going to be Northwest Talus Drive. I know the answer, but I want this for the public to be able to hear it because I know there's been some concern that the initial traffic plan, I'm sure, was considering the full development, which this would be included. So if you could just very briefly just speak on that aspect.
I'm not sure what I could add to that. The overall traffic planning for the project included this development. In fact, it included quite a few more residences in this area than are being proposed. So by any definition, there's actually going to be some stranded capacity left in the roadway network. There'll be some capacity that we are not using. And this development was anticipated in the road design.
Thanks.
Stranded capacity. It's an April Fool's turn.
I'll have to keep that one. I'll keep that in my pocket. Yeah.
Thanks, Dan. I just want to have some clarity for the public. Thank you.
And some new terminology that we get from Dan every time he comes up. So thank you. All right. So if there are no further questions at this time, let's go to public comment, and then we can ask questions beyond that. All right. So if I butcher your name, I apologize.
Can I just add one thing?
You may.
Are there email addresses on there as well?
There are.
Okay, great. Just at the end of the evening, if you can make sure your written address and especially your email address is super clear, because we'll be sending out the responses from all of this tonight, and we just want to make sure everybody gets them.
Yeah. So far, it looked pretty good.
Okay, great.
And then there were a few comments that were sent via email. I know Mr. Kapler's here, so I don't see your name on here. You will be speaking, okay? Ms. Marsh? Yes. And then I think there was another email that came in. I can't recall who it was. No?
I don't know, we've gotten quite a few.
Okay. All right. But they're all in the record. Yeah. Okay. So let's start with, is it Ken Eastman?
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Eastman.
My name is Ken Eastman.
If you might go to the microphone. So I'll say this. Everyone should go to the microphone, please. State your name, your address. We'd like to hear what you have to say, but I think we have a handful of people that want to speak, so try and be as concise as possible. But we want to get your point across. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ken Eastman. I'm a resident of Talus. My address is 2473 Northwest Stony Creek Drive. My questions are around the topic of the areas that are not part of the home parcels. When the developer is complete and all the home parcels are sold, it appears that there are some properties left. Where will they go? Who will they be deeded over to? Who will be responsible? My follow-on question to that is, as a mandatory member of the Talus Homeowner Association, I'm concerned about whatever liabilities the Homeowners Association, therefore myself, might have to share with any of the infrastructure that gets deeded to the Homeowner Association, if that's the case. The quality of the landscaping, the irrigation, because ultimately when the developer is gone and all those home sites are sold, it's the Homeowners Association that may potentially have to pick up that liability, and that liability is forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eastman. Okay, Ms. Milkowski?
My name is Lisa Milkowski, and I live on 890 Lingering Pine Lane, adjacent to Harvey Manning Park. So I think you may know where that is. I have a couple random comments first. What sidewalks are being removed? I regularly jog or run in Talus, so I'm familiar with the slopes, and I'm curious what sidewalks are being taken out. I do regularly go up and down steps and all of that, so I know those hillsides. In terms of the trails that are sometimes closed, I also regularly hike up to the anti-aircraft trailhead with my family. I remember once hiking up there with a toddler on my back, and my husband had a larger kid on his back, and we had hiked up to anti-aircraft and then came back down, and we had crossed this parcel of land, and then it was closed, and we were not allowed to go through there. And this is after 3 hours of hiking with kids on our back and another kid who was ready to be home. So it's important that we somehow put signage up, or we consider the fact that residents of Talus may have been hiking for a long time. In terms of the recreation areas or the water towers, I really appreciate how in the past there has always been large tree areas around the water towers, and that's the case below Harvey Manning Park. There's a tower or something there that's covered by trees. So aesthetically, it's very well done by the city, so I really appreciate that. And please keep that in mind with these water towers. Additionally, okay, a neighbor along Summer Hill, you may not know this, or maybe you just need a little reminder, did have flooding in their backyard with major property damage when some of the drainage from above, there's some sort of drainage ditch back there, somehow got trees and debris put in it, and there was several properties that had water damage in the back. So in terms of proper drainage and that's large slopes, it is a big factor, and it has affected residents already in Aliante. What else? Oh, yes. So being adjacent to, this is probably my main point and main concern talking to some of my adjacent neighbors, is the parcel that I see does not extend further to the north, but the road there is deadheaded. So my immediate thought is this going to be developed further down? And I would like to know that now. I hear rumors that it is, but maybe those are not accurate. So is it true that this is the last development in Talus or not?
So
I'm wondering about that northern
So-
square of land.
I'm just going to come up and stand with you so I can point it.
Sure, please.
So remember, north is to the right. So this road, you can see it comes all the way up here.
Right there.
This is the city limits right now. There's been a request to annex land to the north of here and include it in both in the city and in Talus, which could potentially extend that road to the north.
How far would that be?
Well, in our memo, we'll show you what the proposal is that's come in, but I just wanted everyone to be able to see while we're standing here which one we're talking about.
So my additional comment related to that would be, as someone who lives adjacent to Harvey Manning Park and along that power line easement, I think the times are such. I'm an engineer by trade myself, a biomedical engineer, state of Wisconsin. And so some of this I appreciate, not necessarily from my discipline, but just as being an engineer. I see a power line, and I'm adjacent to the park. The times are such that that line should be buried. And if the next development is going to extend to that power line, I think it's the opportunity for the city of Issaquah to say, let's bury that power line all along Talus to the mini station or whatever it is at the corner of 900 and Newport Way. So as you think about what's coming next, please think about that power line, and in terms of aesthetically, that could be buried. Safety, I mean, it's right adjacent to a park. It's right adjacent to many tall trees that can fall on that line. And in terms of consistency for the entire neighborhood, that line should be buried. If development were to continue in that area and those trees were taken down, it would not be a beautiful sight to see that power line exposed like that. So think about that for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Milkowski. Ms. Scarce. Did I get that right? Okay, for the record, since she wasn't at the microphone, she's going to decline because her question was already answered. Thank you. Mr. Hoffman.
Yes, good evening. My name is Todd Hoffman. I live in the Bridges in Talus, 2106 Northwest Alpine Crest Way. Question I have is, so when we're in the Bridges, I'm in the Bridges, and I'm literally the first house on the right in the Bridges. And in front of the water tower, is there any plans on that space in front of the water tower? So if it's this area right down here. So that's one question. The other is, I relocated here from Chicago, and I've heard the term several times, project. That is a little concerning to me. So I would like a better definition of what are projects when we're talking about, if you would, high density or mid density type housing. And then the last question is just in regards to the architecture. It sounds like we're not far enough there yet, but the heights and the view obstruction from the Bridges area.
I can answer the first part of that question. So that little area that you identified just east of the reservoir there.
Yes.
I failed to mention in my piece, that will be dedicated to the city.
Okay.
That will come into city ownership. It's known as Tract I.
Yeah.
And there's kind of been two proposals floated around in the past for that. One being that would just become like a passive open space. I don't want to say a full park, but just a city-owned open space. And the second, and I don't have the full history, but that area was discussed in the past as being a demonstration site for a project similar to the Z Home project in Issaquah Highlands, which is like an energy efficiency cutting edge model. So they're, under that scenario, it would be, I don't know how many units, but a small project that featured apartments or condos that utilize these high-end energy efficiency techniques.
Okay, one of the challenges that we have, and we've lived here 4 or 5 years now, is, on a weekly basis, we're calling the police to come up there. Activity is very active there, and apparently it has quite a history as well, is my understanding. So really, from a security standpoint, was the ask there.
I would hope that I'm aware of that there's been some issues, and I know that the city put a chain link fence around the tower because people were having parties on the top. My guess is that as this gets developed, those problems hopefully would kind of start to take care of themselves as more people become in the area, and that's less of a remote, area.
Sure.
So I think that's the expectation.
Okay, thanks.
I think you're concerned about the project. It's just a word, a project, and in the traditional sense of the word, not the Chicago sense of the word.
I appreciated the context in which you provided that. And so we'll include in the memo the specific height limits for each of those parcels. I think it's in the 40s for 7 and 8, and a little bit taller in parcel 9. But we'll include the specific height limits. The actual style of the buildings is reviewed by the Architectural Review Committee, which is run by the Talus the property owner.
Okay. I mean, the hopes would be that would tie in or complement the bridges, which, again, I heard Whistler, like resort, lodgy, so it would complement that as opposed to contrast.
Yeah, part of the development agreements that we work with, including the Talus development agreement, requires that they are complementary, that they fit within the character of the development agreement and so forth. So that should be taken care of through the Architectural Review Committee.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Richter.
Hi, David Richter, 2571 Northwest Alpine Crest Way in Bridges. I think my concern has to do, and I really appreciate all the comments, and this has really been helpful for us. We live right over here, and I'm just, as I look across to this area here, really concerned about the steepness of the slope and concerned about how that's going to be stabilized, and just seems like looking up at those guys, it's a long slide down. And so just curious about how that's going to be stabilized and how those houses are going to be built. I mean, the houses could be built on this side, and that would probably be better than on that side. So anyway, just curious about that.
So the part that's white, that's not being touched. That's outside of the plat.
Understood.
I mean, we'll still.
It's hard. It's hard. If I stand up here by these towers and I look at the line between here, it looks like these two are on the downhill side of that slope, and that would be of concern to me. With these houses here, they're going to fall the other way. So sorry, you guys, but so that's a primary concern to us.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richter. Ms. Lanning.
Hi, I'm Beth Lanning. I live at 552 Lingering Pine Drive Northwest. And just a couple of things, having been on the board in the past, as it is an all homeowner board now, who's going to maintain the walls? We have a mix of homeowners maintaining and the HOA. So we'd just like to see some consistency in that. Curious, how many feet of new forest trail will we have? Stormwater drains. Who's going to maintain that? Is that a city responsibility? Will it be the HOA? The hill climb, just curious, is that going to be concrete? I did see the built out there, the framed wood steps. I kind of like that concept, but knowing some of the trails that we have now where the steps have completely deteriorated, they were not framed out. They were just wood steps. Would like to see something a little more permanent. Let's see. The trails that are currently in the open areas that are not being developed, are those going to be brought up to the same standard as the rest of the trails since they aren't in the actual developed area or in the developed areas? Some of those are rather thin. They're foot trails right now.
So, I'm sorry,
ahead.
Beth, I just
Yeah,
want to
no
make
problem.
sure that,
Like this one here.
okay, so you're talking about existing trails that are being tied into, are they going to be changed, upgraded,
Right.
refreshed, or something like
Yes,
that? Okay.
so that they meet the same standards as the rest of the finished trails.
I think those trails fall outside of the community right now.
They do,
Right, right.
which has been an issue. We get a lot of people use the trails that are up above there to connect to everything up on in King County. So, and that's another thing with the development going on. If the trails are going to be closed for any amount of time, we need to get communication out to the community ahead of time and make sure everyone's aware.
Yep.
So that there's, why didn't we know? We get a lot of that now. So, curious about handicap parking and again, delivery parking. We have a very big lack of that in Talus right now, get a lot of complaints on it. So specifically now we're dealing with several handicap issues. So just curious what that's going to be. And the roads, are they going to be public roads or are they going to be private roads? So who's responsible for maintaining snow plowing? Is that going to be the city or will the association be responsible for maintaining those roads?
I can answer that last one.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't cover this either. Shangri-La will be a public road.
Okay.
And then Road A, which is the westernmost road in parcel 7, that will be a public road.
Okay.
All the other roads are private.
Okay.
And we'll include this in the memo, too.
Okay. And also, right now, there's a temporary kind of construction type sign at the top of Talus Drive that lists several of the neighborhoods that are now in Talus. And something we would like to see is a nice monument at the top that lists all the neighborhoods in Talus rather than just a handful of them. And I'm sure that's something we can work with Darren on as well. So, but that's been a request we've heard a lot of lately. So why isn't our neighborhood on the top of the hill?
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lanning. Is there anybody else that would like to speak tonight before I close the public comment portion? I'm shocked, Mr. Kapler. Is this an April Fool's joke, sir?
Yeah, thank you. David Kapler, 255 Southeast Andrews Street. I'm for identification. I'm president of Issaquah Trails Club, but I'm not really speaking for the Trails Club tonight, although a lot of trail issues is what I'm going to be talking about. Not that the Trails Club would disagree with what I'm saying, I don't think, but the western buffer, there was supposed to be originally in the original agreement a 50-foot buffer along the western edge, and I guess there's been these minor amendments that allowed water towers to go in, and now we've got a section of road going in. I'm concerned about that, and partly several things, and just partly it can cause a lot of extra unauthorized access to Cougar Mountain Regional Wildland Park, and we want to make sure that that is appropriate. Access points are appropriate and to the right trails and that kind of thing. There was something about Track D and western walls and trees, and then we got into that tree thing business again, but I'm concerned about walls and trees and that whole thing. The fire thing was mentioned. I'm not, the 15% grade, when you're putting those houses right up against a forest, someday that forest is going to have a major fire. I mean, you're going to have kids back in there building their camps and their forts and having fires and who knows what else in those August times when the north wind comes down Lake Sammamish, and the potential for wildfire is significant, and I'm not sure how it should be dealt with there, but it seems like there should be more restrictions on building materials in terms of on exterior building materials and roofs than in other parts of the city. Landscape maintenance and how we deal with, there's also a condition, construction condition 66. Invasive plants are to be removed from the open space areas. They came in there and they logged most of parcel 7, and then it just left. I was trying to get through that, do some work back in there, hiking around, trying to figure out where this potential annexation area, how that would connect with everything. And I came back through the park and then tried to get through here. And the blackberries are just thick all through. If you're on the road there, it's fine, but the blackberries, the non-native blackberries, are all over. There's a lot of places where there's a butterfly bush and other pretty strong invasives. And this, because most of this lot was kind of logged. They didn't stake out the stumps or whatever, but they did log it, and the invasives have come in. So it's going to take a while to get rid of those invasives in the open areas, the open space areas, of the areas that are going to remain as open space. And I think it needs even a longer than a 3-year period that was mentioned in one place. If this were just if you went back in the forest there, yeah, there's some holly and there's places where there's some more sun, there might be some blackberries, but the invasives to the west of here in the park are so much less than they are in these parcels here. There was that construction easement, or construction condition 54, talked about shrubs and trees in the hydro mix. I didn't know how they were going to put out, unless you had tree seeds or shrub seeds in the hydro mix. That one I didn't follow. 48-foot walls, and I think of that big mustard wall going up into the highlands, into a big mustard or whatever color wall across the top there. At one point in the city, it was real important to protect the forested hillsides. And, you know, that's been a battle with both the highlands and with Talus. But the concept of a 48-foot wall up there atop is very concerning to me. And how that can be landscaped. The other concerns about walls are they really can't be climbable. If you're talking about that'll be a very popular trail there, putting a very popular trail right under a wall. One thing I noticed on the 900 walls, the concrete walls there that look like rock, they're like shingles. They overlap, so there's no handholds. If you turn that wall upside down, you'd climb it in a cinch, because it'd be like putting shingles backwards on a house, and you'd have all kinds of good handholds. So we got to make sure the walls, especially if they're right there at a trail, are not climbable when they're this tall, especially. Okay, parking. The Issaquah Trails Club, we've really tried hard not to encourage trailhead parking like at Sierra Court, up on Squawk Mountain, and other places. We got 2 trailheads in Issaquah for Squawk Mountain on Mountainside Drive and over here on Sunrise, and they're in residential areas, but there's not a lot of houses close by. There's a lot of shoulder space, but unfortunately they haven't been discovered by the region. As people find out, hey, I can drive up to there and save myself several hundred feet of elevation, there's going to be a tendency to want to park up there. The Highlands dealt with trailheads or with this access by basically allowing no access into Grand Ridge Park from the north side, most of the east side, and only on the south side in the area of the South Pond and Central Park. So, but people already know about some of these access points, and it could be, what we really need is another more regional type trailheads off of Newport, which they are going to build one there, and more on 900 for Cougar, because we don't want these neighborhoods, which are going to be very difficult parking-wise anyway, to become popular trailheads. And the community, the single-family homes to the south are going to be the ones that are going to get hit with that. They do have a great bridge over West Tibbetts Creek, though.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Kapler.
Thank you.
Ms. Marsh.
Always have my pajama pants. My name's Connie Marsh. I live at, I'm not going to say that. I have a store at 1175 Northwest Gilman Boulevard, Suite B11. I also live on Squawk. And I actually have a hard copy of the Talus Development Agreement, which I read again because it occurred to me nobody's reading it anymore. And what I read was a tremendous amount of sociable public realm and how Talus is supposed to be connected and usable by everyone and linked to everything so you can easily get from place to place. And then I looked at this and I saw large retaining walls, very skimpy connections to the rest of Talus, and awkward. And so that basic precept of building this mountain village with this huge sociable public realm seemed not there. There was also a large variety of different uses. And frankly, I see very little variety of different uses in this. And I don't see the linkage to other uses. Now, this may be a factor of Talus altogether because it's turned out to be something with few uses, but it occurred to me in reading it that, okay, maybe it's changed and maybe it failed its vision. And I'm unwilling to give up that large failure of vision for something that we called an urban village and spent so much time on. So in this situation, we need more mixed use or mixture of housing styles at the very least, because this looks very suburban to me. And we need more connectivity. It says when you cannot, when you have large retaining walls or these restrictions, you must increase the trails. And there was even a shall in there, which is rare for the Talus Development Agreement. And I don't see this extra attention paid to the trails. Retaining walls. Now I'm going to start first. Years ago, I had heart failure. They cleared this area totally down to 10 feet buffer, and they weren't allowed to clear 40 feet of that on all sides. And they overcleared and they didn't do anything about it. And then they let it sit, because at that point in time, we weren't sitting up here pummeling on you guys saying, you can't just let them clear the land and then let it go. You have to make sure that they don't overclear. And here we are, we're in a situation where they cleared, they let it go, it's filled with weeds, and now they're saying, well, it just needs to go back to its original condition. Well, its original condition is forested. And so when you say this is open space, this should be turned back into the forested space prior to clearing. Because at this point in time, using this, they wouldn't be able to clear it all of that. And so it's not just removing the invasives, it is returning it to the pre-development condition. And I did see a line in the development agreement that said that you did need to do that. I did not see that reflected in the conditions that were allowed there. Also, there was a line saying that you could allow an intersection to a water utility. I didn't see anything saying you could allow an entire road to a water utility in the 50-foot buffer. Now, I didn't see the administrative minor modification when it came out 10 years ago, because that's not a public issue, so no comment was allowed by the public, but I would have flipped a gourd. Of course, you can just see that, can't you? Okay. So, my memory, and this is maybe part of that WPHH thing, was that there was actually a 10-foot restriction around the parcel, so that there was a 10-foot border on this parcel. Now that is way deep in my memory, and I couldn't find my WPHH document in my files. But I would like to know if there is actually a buffer. I know there's a clearing one, but I thought it stayed. Okay, now we're to retaining walls. 50-foot retaining wall. There is so much language also in the development agreement about the designing with nature and how you're supposed to step things back, and you're supposed to make it human scale because you're in this mountainous area that the only way to make people comfortable is to make it small enough for people to want to live there. A 50-foot retaining wall is the antithesis of that. There's a large paragraph about buildings and how you need to build the buildings to scale so that they are human. And they say you step them back, you break them down, you make them smaller, and then you add your landscaping. It's not, yes, you build a 50-foot blank wall and then you landscape in front of it. So I would say toss it back to the drawing board for this wall and this series of walls, because we all know the walls in Talus, and they're obtrusive. And you see them everywhere, and they've only been sort of minorly screened, and it's taken a very long time. So toss it back and say, you know what? I see you have topographical issues. They're serious. You knew that going into it. And so now figure out how to make it great. Don't just berm it up and then stick your houses all in a row on the top like any other suburban development. Okay, and I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Marsh. Food for thought, of course. All right, is there anybody else that would like to speak during this public comment portion of the meeting? Last call. Seeing no others, I would like to go ahead and close the public comment portion at 9:06. Thank you very much. As Lucy stated earlier, here's the list. They will be sending out responses to all of the public comment. We can address a couple of them or talk about a couple of them tonight, but most of the comments will come back from these guys later. I'll start by saying thank you for the concerns and the questions. I want to address two things in particular. Ms. Mikowski had two things that struck with me. One is the adjacent property. Where are you? I'm missing. There you are. I will say from this commission standpoint, we don't have any purview over adjacent properties at this point, so anything that gets extended, we won't be able to really discuss that. I understand your concern, and we've often talked about, hey, we're looking at these parcels, but what's happening around it? Right now, it's not even annexed at this point, so we can't really even discuss it, but I know that Lucy and company will respond with what they know.
So Jeff's right, it's outside of the purview of this, but my thought is that Mike and I will try and find out what the process and who to contact if you're interested in the annexation, and include that in the memo so you know how to follow that separate track.
Thank you, Lucy. And then the other piece was the access during construction, and it just prompted me to think about, these are active trails right now. People are using them when construction is happening. I'm just curious what the plan is to preserve access to them, and if there is no access during construction, how you're going to communicate to the community what is open, what isn't open, what's safe, and so forth. So if you could address that, that would be great. And then I'm going to go ahead and open it up for discussion amongst commission. Michael?
Yeah, I think just one comment I heard, there was concern about sidewalks being removed. And I think what Mike meant was that sometimes the certain types of roads require a sidewalk on both sides of the road. And in this new development, we'll only have them on one side of the road. So I don't think they're taking sidewalks out of Talus anywhere.
Okay, I read that somewhere in one of the documents.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out, Michael, because that's
Right.
true. No existing sidewalks are proposed for removal.
Yeah.
And most of the roads have sidewalks on both sides in this new area. There are some limited portions where there are no active uses on one side, like one of the open spaces, where we have allowed a sidewalk to be removed for a limited portion to minimize grading.
And then my second question is for the city. I know Jeff just talked that we need to be forward-thinking and plan for adjacent neighborhoods, but why are we allowing a dead end in this development here when we have been discouraged from doing that in the past?
So we're required by law to provide connections to adjacent parcels, if that's the one you're talking about.
Even though that parcel doesn't exist yet, or does it?
Well, and I think this is the question that I had. And I didn't say this because I wasn't sure, but I'll say it anyway. I think we may be required by law to provide a connection to it, even if it didn't come into the city. Because they're allowed to build, say, one house on it or something, and we have to provide access. You'll notice that when you look at that handout I gave you, that's one of the things that we have to review for. We can't landlock any parcel.
Is that a yes?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right, Eric?
Yeah, I thought I heard something about land preservation earlier in the meeting today. Is there going to be anything that's going to be preserved where the builder has not developed completely out and is preserving some of the land?
Oh, yeah, someone had a question about, you had a question
Mr.
about.
Eastman?
Thank you. Recognized the face, but I couldn't get the name. I think that that's something I'd like to address in the memo, unless you want to point to a particular parcel that you were thinking about, like you wanted to know what was happening with each parcel and whether there was any land being set aside through the plat that wasn't going to be developed.
No, my question is,
Could you come up to the microphone again? Thank you.
my question is, when you look at this entire acreage, and then you take out the individual parcels that'll be sold as home lots, it's a Swiss cheese of remaining property. My question is, what happens to that? Who owns it? Who will own it? Who will it be deeded to? And who will have the liability long-term for a significant amount of real estate here that is not home parcels?
Are you talking about like the white areas there, all of that?
Everything that's
Yeah.
not a parcel.
Right.
There's a huge amount of area here.
I think that
I
he's
think what
talking
he means
about-
is everything that's not a lot.
Everything that's not a lot.
Okay.
Yeah,
They're
all of
referred
this,
to as tracts.
all of this.
They're all
All of
part
that.
of, they're all part of this permit, right?
Right, but we can,
Yeah.
we can include a.
So homeowners buy 100 and some odd home lots.
Mhm.
There's something left. That's
Right.
my question.
Yeah.
I have one further question, just to follow with what Connie said also. The white areas, I think my understanding was that the developer was going to do nothing with that area, and I would like to just confirm that, whether that's the case or not, because I agree with Connie in the sense that that's not true, to what existed before all that was removed years and years ago, so.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Carl?
I just want to echo a little bit of what Connie, Ms. Marsh was saying, because when I was first looking at this, I hearkened back to some of the other discussions we had as a commission looking at these, debating whether they were even urban villages or not. The proverbial horses out of the barn on this one, on Talus overall, but I think it is questionable, sociable public realm and the things that we've studied and wrestled with. I think it needs to be specifically addressed in the staff report about how this does fit in and agree with the overall concept without a, potential, we're not redoing all of Talus, because I think in some regards we'd say it probably hasn't met some of the initial aspirations, but I'd certainly like to hear a little bit more about that from staff in the city.
If I could expand on that a little bit.
Sure.
So I want to ask the question that doesn't necessarily have to be answered right this second, but Connie sort of brought up, she brought up stuff that sort of questioned if we were meeting the development agreement's requirements, whether it's sociable public realm or otherwise. But if we talk about, for example, the walls and not stepping them back, our responsibility here is to make decisions based on things that fit within the development agreement, whether or not we agree with it. And so the things that are being proposed, I just need to know, are they all fitting within the development agreement and meeting the letter of those?
And I'm
those
nodding my
agreements?
head because not because I'm saying, we obviously wouldn't have recommended
Yeah,
if we didn't think that was true. But I hear the question, and I think that's what we're going to have to try and describe to you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I would add
Thank you.
to that, her comment about the conditions should be back to forest, and those. some of
Yeah,
those
I think she had a lot of great points
Yeah.
that just need the explanations. That if we're approving this and they're 48-foot walls, it's not a question of whether 48-foot walls, it's just do the 48-foot walls fit within the letter of the agreement that we couldn't challenge anyway if that were the case.
And the last thing, just a reaction to public comment, Mr. Kapler's comment about the wildfire, fire danger overall is something that we haven't really run across in any of our previous agreements of thinking of that. So taking that into account, I think is critical. And you look at the geography and the prevailing weather, I think that's a very salient point.
Yeah, Jim.
Just a quick clarification, Mr. Pugh, pointed out the fact that his group purchased this land in 2007. Who actually cleared that land?
Apparently Mr. Hayes did.
The original developer.
The original developer.
Correct. They logged it. They
Okay.
didn't clear it, they just logged
They logged
the
it.
logs off.
Okay, thanks. And then we're going to, obviously, you're going to address Mr. Richter's concern about the houses on either side of the slope, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. And everything else that was brought up tonight, I'm assuming, so. All right, anything else from the commission tonight? Okay, so we'll go ahead and close this discussion right now
Sure.
on this particular topic. And are there any other new business or announcements we need to discuss?
No, we don't have, other than the training in May, we don't have other permits scheduled.
Okay.
The CIP tomorrow is actually for the Development Commission, because the Central Issaquah Plan, not the first, it's actually the second permit under the Central Issaquah Plan is in and starting. There's a training tomorrow, and then the permits are the second half of May and the second half of April and the first half of May.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, so at this time, I'd like to thank everybody for their participation here, the applicant and the owner applicant, public, staff for all the work that you guys have done, and the commission, of course, for all that you've done as well, and we'll continue this conversation. So at this time, we're going to close the meeting at 9:17 p.m. Thank you very much.